Jocko Willink. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, man.
I'm super excited and super happy to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. I know that you and I did 5.5 hours on my podcast, so schedule is clear. Let's go.
Let's go. And actually, and people will see the Jocko Go drinks. This is not some sort of promotional by me, but these are the energy drinks I drink. So this could be called the Bring Your Own Go podcast. It is the energy drink I drink. And no, I'm not told to promote that or paid to promote that. It's just the one that I drink. So there you go. No pun intended. I was just saying to our producer a moment ago that rarely do I sit down and do a podcast with somebody that's skilled in podcasting. Lex Friedman would be the only person that I've had on this podcast, I believe, who's also a podcaster. Since you're a podcaster and many other things, I confess I'm a little bit intimidated.
Well, it's a weird thing to actually call a skill because it's something that I just kind of started doing. It's something that you just kind of started doing. It's something that Lex just kind of started doing. And I never practiced it. I didn't sit down before my first podcast and think about how I should deliver things. I just kind of did it. So maybe it's just luck more than skill.
Well, you and I actually go back further than that conversation that we had on your podcast. I think it might have been 2014, 2015, and you were on the Tim Ferriss podcast. And the time I was living with my girlfriend, we had moved from San Diego to the Bay Area. We were living in this little tiny apartment in a basement in Oakland, trying to save up to buy a place or rent a place that was decent to live in. And we both knew a lot of team guys. She knew more team guys than I did in San Diego. I dated a few, just to be direct. Great woman. Those guys were cool to me, mostly. And I remember when I saw the photo on the top card for Tim's podcast, it was your face. And I said, "Do you know this guy from San Diego?" And she goes, "Nope. But if you had to draw a Navy SEAL, that's what you draw." So I think for a lot of people, you embody their notion of a number of different things, some of which you talk about, but some of which, when you open up a bit and really get specific about work in the military and work in daily life and what it is to be you, but really what it is to be a human being, some important contradictions also emerge, right? Obviously, discipline is a theme that people associate with you, right? In my view, and I think in the view of a lot of people, you embody discipline. So today I definitely want to talk about routines, but also mindsets, but also things that you do and ways that you approach things that might not contradict, but not be so obvious to people, might be a little bit counterintuitive. And in addition to that, you have a lot of different aspects to your life. In addition to running businesses, you're a family man, you have children and married a long time. And so you have a lot of knowledge from different domains of life. So with your permission, I'd like to dive into all of them over the next 26 hours.
Let's dive.
Great. I'm fascinated by this idea of sense of self. I feel like all of us can look back to a time early in life when we first had some experience. Could be in art class, could be fishing, could be sport. Doesn't really matter what the exact experience was, but where we first realized that there are really cool things in the world. Like something kind of turned us on at the level of excitement, or maybe scared us or something like that. Do you have any recollection of such an event? Maybe not the first one, but do you ever remember hearing or seeing something as a young kid, and maybe you could tell us how young, and just thinking like, yeah, more of that, please?
A lot of times when people ask questions along this line of like, when was there a moment, right? When was there a moment that you realized discipline? Or when was there a moment you realized leadership? Or when was there a moment you realized detachment? Kind of like the question here, when was there a moment you realized, for lack of a better way of saying it, I'm a person, right? I'm a person with my own thoughts, and I can make things happen. And for me, all those answers are usually fairly gradual. You know, there's like a little thing that indicates, and you get a clue, and then you move a little bit further down that road, then you get another clue, and then you move a little bit further down that road and you get another clue. So that's what I would say for me, life was like. You know, when I was a little kid, I was kind of slowly discovering that I was a person, I was a human. I remember my mom took me shopping. I was probably about 10 years old, and I needed to get pants for school. And my mom took me shopping. And when I went into the store, there was a girl that was, I don't know what they're called in a store, a retail sales girl. Mm-hmm. She was probably about 16. And I started chatting her up, right? And I kind of recognized it a little bit, but I sort of didn't too. And I just was chatting to this girl and I was making her laugh. I was having a good time with the whole thing and, putting on the pants and spinning around and she was laughing. And I remember when we left the store with the pants and my mom was sort of talking to me about the fact that, what were you trying to do to that girl? And I was thinking to myself, well, I kind of liked that girl. She was pretty. And I don't know why that popped into my head, but I just remember thinking, hey man, there's a whole world out there and let's go make it happen.
Yeah, it's a great story because I think it really speaks to this thing that you mentioned, which is that when we first start to realize we have a sense of self, it has something to do with cause and effect on the world. Like we can have an impact in some way on things outside of us, outside of our home. Lately I've been reading a lot of psychology and I've been listening to some of your content, and I definitely want to talk to you about a study that you covered related to these. It's a brutal experiment with these kids that either had stutter or didn't have stutter. I want to get into that a little bit later, but what we do and how we treat people and how we receive feedback and give feedback has a big impact. But I think some of that happens just in our own relationship to things in the world. The old Hungarian psychologists, I'm learning, had this idea of two kinds of people. They literally thought there were two kinds of people. There are generators and projectors. And generators are people that are just from a very young age, they realize they can impact other people positively, negatively, and they want to create things in the world. They want to generate stuff. And they go, wow, I can actually build stuff and break stuff and blow stuff up maybe, but also, help things. And then there are these projectors that like to just kind of reflect on what they see. And they made the really important point, I think, that it's not that generators are good and projectors are bad. The world needs both, that they really work in a kind of symbiotic way. But your story captures the essence of what it is to be a generator, which is that by doing certain things, you can have an impact and it feeds back to you, and it's likely that they receive something from it as well.
Yeah, and where this all came to fruition, as I now piece together as you're talking through this stuff, look, when I joined the military, you join the military and you get a blank slate. So no one cares where you came from. No one cares what you did. You were the captain of the football team, captain of the soccer team. No one cares. No one cares what your grades were. No one cares what you got on the SATs and no one cares about anything. You're a blank slate. And then with that blank slate, it is, hey, if you do this thing, if you perform this task and you perform it well, you will get recognition. You will hopefully get more control over your own destiny, which is the ultimate in compensation for human beings. To have more control over your own destiny is the ultimate compensation. You and I were talking before we hit record, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't control what you're doing every day, or at least you don't control most of what you're doing, then it's not worth it. The reason people try and make money is so they can have more autonomy in their life. And so in the military, it becomes very clear, and it became very clear to me very quickly, that if I performed well, I actually got a lot more freedom with what I did. Even in boot camp, if you pass an inspection in boot camp, you don't have to redo your locker, or you don't have to make your bed again because you did it right the first time. And so you have an extra 15 minutes. And so for me, really, that's when I started to realize, what I'm doing right now is going to impact not only what's going to happen to me in the next hour, but in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And I think that's the biggest miss that we have when we're growing up. And I know you had your challenges and tribulations as you were growing up, because you didn't realize, what I'm doing right now is going to affect where I'm going to be in the future. And it didn't happen until you were out of high school and you went to junior college and you're like, wait a second, I can actually put my life together in a positive way. When you're 14, you're thinking, hey, what am I going to do tomorrow? That's basically future operations. Or what am I going to do tomorrow?
At 14, I was like, where am I going to get the Slurpee? Which curves am I going to hit skateboarding? And where are we going to play video games tonight? Or what girls are we going to hang out with? That was kind of the mindset at 14.
Yeah, and then at some point you learned, and so did I, the way the actions that I take now are either going to positively impact my future or they're going to negatively impact my future. And the more I focused on doing things that are going to positively impact my future, the better my life became. And I think that's a very huge lesson to learn that I know I didn't figure out for quite some time.
Yeah, the idea of investments and withdrawals